Good afternoon. Oh, my lighting really isn't that great. And it's stuttering again. Why is that? I don't understand it. Well, this is an attempt to try to do a video. I could probably delete it, but one thing I was talking about this morning um, was speakerwire again. And speakerwire does make a difference. So the last video I posted was on new concept speakerwire, which was an upgrade for me from 16 gauge or 18 gauge. Kind of an outdated wire, but looked good originally. And then as I looked closer, I thought I could see some oxidation. That particular wire was made by a company called, I want to say Canary, but it was nowhere near as legitimate as them. Anyway, a no-name brand. So I took a gamble on it, but it was set up like I wanted. I needed pins on the ends for spring clip connections on speakers. And so found something with some pins, found something that had banana plugs on the other side for easy one-handed installations. So I went with that, and then I realized, wow, I think I need an upgrade. So I went to a heavier gauge, better quality copper wire that was oxygen free with bare wire instead of the pins, although it's a bit cumbersome tucking those wires in and winding those wires to make sure that you can get them in the back of your speakers without touching, which is always easier when you've got a solid pin or a banana plug. But so I went with bare wire on that end, and I went to spade plugs on the other end, which would be the amp end. And I found some inexpensive gold-plated spade lugs, I guess they are called, to be able to utilize the old style pin screw down, which is just a basic kind of a shaft and a knob. You know, the old style, like on acoustic research speakers, kind of hard to wind your wire around that and tighten that down. There's never any sort of a rough washer there to grab. Never a very good connection. So spade plugs, I thought these were way too big for some of the older speakers, but I thought I'd try them anyway, and they will connect to the back of the amp pretty well, although it's not the perfect connection, because in my mind on 5-way binding post, the perfect connection is a banana plug, and not only for connection, but for ease. It's a one-handed connection. You basically take your speaker wire and you plug it in the back. The beauty of five-way binding posts and the beauty of banana plugs. When you do a lot of switching, swapping around, banana plugs will save you hours of time and risk. Highly recommended. But in this case, I went to a spade lug, which is sort of a fork connector. And anyway, they came out great. But one thing I noticed this morning, when I turned on some music, was that the speakers now sounded crisp. And I thought to myself, these speakers haven't sounded crisp forever. I've connected many amps, many setups to these little, they are actually Pinnacle AC 550s, small two-way bookshelf about 12 inches high, with an interesting woofer. It's sort of a, I don't know if you call it Beck Stream, but it's got a rubber surround and it's got a sort of composite cone. Quite nice. And Pinnacle is one of those brands that, my opinion, sort of is a bit of a sleeper, kind of lurks in the background. Who knows if they've been bought out in the last 10 or 20 years, but this pair is probably at least 20 years old, and they're made well, and I call them Titan killers because the same speaker in their class is made by Paradigm. Paradigm Titans have been a sort of a staple in bookshelf speakers for a long time, 20 years now, and made out of Canada, like Energy and a couple other good brands under a particular umbrella of companies that have an anechoic chamber and have some pretty high-end testing facilities up in Canada. And so they've made quite a name for themselves up there as far as speakers go, especially on the budget end. And anyway, I call these little these little Pinnacles are quite cheap. You can pick them up for $100, $150 in perfect shape. And for a bookshelf, they go quite low. I think specs give them down to 40, which is hard to believe for a 5¼ inch woofer. So anyway, immediately noticed a difference in the highs when looking at the two different speaker cables. So I just wanted to throw my hat in the ring and say speaker cables do matter. And I'm from that camp that pretty much everything matters in this hobby of mine. So a lot of people will say you could probably get the same sound out of a coat hanger. Well, that's possible, but I'm going to go on the record and rule out any psychological events and occurrence here, and say that upgrading the cables engage in newness, so better copper that's oxygen-free copper. The hopefully will last a lot longer, and using some upgraded connections on one end, and on the other end actually going to bare copper wire. And so pretty unbelievable that when you've been doing this long enough, you've heard that same pair of speakers over years time, and then when you do make a change like that, you notice a difference, and it can't be psychological in my opinion. So anybody looking for a little bit more sparkle, a little bit more luster, a little bit more action out of their speakers, if your cable is old, your cable is not oxygen free, if your cable ends are not shiny, cut them, re-splice, what do you call it? Retrim, do what you need to do, and try some good cable, and see if it'll help put a little spring in your step. Thank you for listening. We'll talk to you soon.